Hello, everybody. You're welcome to today's episode of the Tech Talk Show with me, Kazim. Last week, we looked at 10 tips that will get you productive with Microsoft 365 with Chris Ard. And today on the show, on today's episode of the show, we're going to be talking OneDrive all the way. And I've got Mr. OneDrive himself on the show with us today to walk us through the topic of today. You're very much welcome on the show, Mr. OneDrive.
Yes, thank you so much. And I have to tell you why they called me Mr. OneDrive. That's not me. Because the people ask, you have to know, MVPs have to go to once a year, they can go to Redmond. Microsoft invites all the MVP, 50% come. You have 2,000 people in Redmond. And there was a new manager, and I'm coming from the restroom, and they say, "Hey, Hans, come on. Here is our new manager." And that is Hans coming from Germany, and we call it Mr. OneDrive because he always knows a lot more than we looking by myself. So they gave me the title, and then I said, okay, if you do that, I have another thing. I have some cards I have to show you. And that's very interesting. I made some pictures. So that means, yes, I have some. Oh, it's a little bit with this.
Okay, I can see that now. Wow.
I have to sign it sometimes. So the ladies got the autograph cards, and the man got the technique.
Okay then. Let's start with this, Mr. OneDrive. Let's start with you introducing yourself to the people. Let the people know who you are, your job role currently, and you've just mentioned to us now how you got the name Mr. OneDrive. So let's just know a little bit more about you, and then we can get to the show proper now.
The thing is that the people know me about Mr. OneDrive. And I have to show you a slide where all the information about is correctly in there, but I've done that. So now you should have it. And that means, yes, I'm an MVP since 7 years. My name is Hans Brender. But if you look also for Hans Brender, you'll find lots of stuff, always with OneDrive and OneDrive Personal and SharePoint and all this stuff. And I'm still working as a cloud productivity evangelist. That means not only with OneDrive. Sometimes the people has to know OneDrive is a different technology. Microsoft have implemented, and it's different. And therefore, I am working for several companies. I am self-employed, but I work for mid-sized and bigger companies, giving some workshop, help them to implement all this stuff. And it's a difference if you have only 10 people in your company or if you have 10,000, 50,000, 100,000 people. So that's a complicated, that 100,000 is more complicated than 10 people, because it's not only the 10 people, but you have to react in several languages and you have to react in all this stuff. And that means it's okay. Sometimes the first thing is you have to show the people what's in there. We cannot do that in 30 minutes. I need 12 hours. So you see, it's completely stuff, 12 hours remote. It's all a little bit thing. And the people are knowing me that I also do some shortcuts about SharePoint Saturdays around the globe. So last Saturday, I was in India, not in person, but here, and have only spoke about, let's say, 50 slides about group policies in OneDrive. And therefore, they know me around the globe. Also, I came with Ignite, the show that is going around the planet last year, to Hong Kong. Microsoft invited me to Hong Kong. That was my first visit in Hong Kong. And I came and have a session. And then sometimes the people came to me, I know your blog. Always about Chinese people. So therefore, yes, they know Mr. OneDrive, and therefore I have also some title. And the last thing what I have done, and we establish in Teams, if you go to productivity and Spark with that, we have digitized myself. Not me, I'm only, because I have only given my knowledge, but other two MVPs, one MVP from Austria is an AI MVP, and the other is a developer, also from Austria, and they make a a bot out of me. So that runs in Teams. So all the people can ask in 2 different languages. We want to expand it to 50 languages and can ask different people about OneDrive. And I have learned a lot during these 700 questions I have in there, because you have to think, the last 20 years, I spoke to IT people, and it's a different. If I spoke about group policies, still there, but sometimes the people do not know what is OneDrive and why it is OneDrive and not OneDrive for business.
Exactly. So I guess we should kick off today's session with, by the way, just a side question now. When are you going to be in Africa? When are we expecting you in Africa?
Not yet, till that's a have to do it.
Okay then. So I'm sure everyone listening right now, or anyone who is going to be watching this video at a later time, shouldn't be alien to OneDrive. But let's just pretend now that we have people that might be listening at a later time or listening to us right now who really don't have a good knowledge about what OneDrive is. Do you mind, can you tell us, how do you define OneDrive or OneDrive for Business now?
Interesting, but we have to look it for a slide number, but let me look. I have to start it again and go to this slide number I have. That's only a small portion. I have written some articles in my blog. They find me. Give it OneDrive and OneDrive and Hans Brender or Mr. OneDrive. You find my blog. I have 850 articles about OneDrive. So it's a long story there. But now I write this command and I have to look for that. That means here I have to go back and show you the stuff. So thinking about OneDrive, OneDrive comes up in the beginning. It was an old thing because we started it several years with Groove. And Groove, what comes from Ray Ozzie, that was the predecessor from Bill Gates as an architect, but he got the version of Groove going with on-premises and going with all the tools to make it happen that we can connect and over without any server and share some information. That was the ground principle about that. Today it's different. They make it new because we have several things we need now, and one is that you have some things like SharePoint, because it works with SharePoint, and you see it's all with OneDrive for Business. Now they have the difference: OneDrive Personal and OneDrive for Business. You can have up to 9 OneDrive for Business, but only 1 OneDrive Personal. OneDrive Personal comes for free. It gives you a little bit about all this stuff, but it comes for free with 5 GB storage. In OneDrive for Business, that comes up with the plans we have, small business plans, or E3, E5 in Office 365. And OneDrive for Business, to see, is inside the SharePoint Online. That means you have the document library there, and you have OneDrive for Business. For each user in an E3 plan has this OneDrive for Business. That's my longer storage of my small hard disk. Means I have only a 128 GB hard disk, but I can have several petabytes of data that resides in the cloud. I can see it in my OneDrive for Business. I can sync it, but with files on demand, that's a technique that I see the configuration, and that makes it very happy that I can sync that, have these petabytes of data with me, only in a small device. And if I want something, I press the button twice, means, okay, it comes from the cloud, make it available, see it's a docx file, opens your Word, and you can work with it. And that's the information you have all around. That means, okay, the synchronization comes not only in Outlook, not only in the several things, not only in the browser, not only in iOS or Android, not only in Teams. So sometimes people say, no, we have Teams, we don't need no SharePoint anymore. Wrong. You still have SharePoint technology behind the scene, and there are fit all together the information you would have. And that will be more and more. And it's not so, I'd have to say, it's not SharePoint or let's say like Dropbox or Box, because then you can have a lot of things, but people do not know. We want to speed up the work. Means if I and you and other people in our organization or outside the organization can work on a document or an Excel sheet or PowerPoint during the same time, you still only have it in OneDrive for Business or in a document library, share it, and we can work together. Means the process that takes up 5 days is now in 1 or 2 days possible.
Okay, OneDrive for Business. We know there are other cloud storage, Dropbox now. There's the Google Cloud as well, the Google storage platform as well. So can you tell us what gives OneDrive that edge? What edges OneDrive in comparison to those other cloud storage platforms?
I think the comparison is not only because Microsoft has more. Microsoft has implemented with Word, with Excel, and the SharePoint libraries, the thing that you can work with OneDrive for you. That means you have your document, you can work with small devices, as I mentioned before, but you can also have several things. Although if I have a library and can also get connection with other Office 365 as a guest user, we call that business to business synchronization. And that's a future. The things will come up because people has to know and understand which security concept is behind the scene. And that's all implemented. Or let's say the new one we showed now during the Ignite session that we see, hey, we have some labels for security that will automatically in finance and so on during the labels, and I can share it with other people that they cannot open it. So that is also for the perspective, it's implemented inside all these techniques. OneDrive is only a word, a marketing team, a technique, and it's concludes a little bit more, and therefore the people have to understand it.
Okay. And you also mentioned earlier, you talked about SharePoint. You mentioned Teams. There seems to be storage almost everywhere on the Microsoft 365 platform, right? Whether you're using SharePoint, you can store your files up in SharePoint. When you're doing Teams, you can also put up your files in Teams. So where is the place for OneDrive, or how does things connect with all of this?
Okay, It's not stored in SharePoint. I have to go a little bit deeper. It's stored in, you mentioned that, Azure. So the scene behind is, and that's a different bit on OneDrive. In OneDrive Personal, you store it directly into Azure. They have only a history function about 30 levels. And in SharePoint, you store it during SharePoint also in Azure. But you have a history function up to, I have some files with 500 history functions. You have to display. The history function is also, if you write in the old days and save it on another thing, you write a document and you call it draft 1, draft 2, final, finalized, the final version. So you have 6 different versions. Now you can say it, okay, I name the endless title, have it there, and then I write on it, or other people can write on it. And each people and each version, if I save it, creates a new version. But it's not completely in the new version. Inside SharePoint, it's cluttered. That means that only the new things will be there, and you see always only one, but the version knows about that. And that means we don't have a possibility. No, we have the possibility to go back. And therefore, you don't need that. That means there's a version history. That's a big difference in SharePoint. Teams is always, if you have OneDrive in Teams, and you will have it in the near future that you have the same sharing capabilities we now have. And if you can now do 3 dots, you are in SharePoint. So that means nothing new one. We need still SharePoint, and we need, but we don't see it, Azure in the background. All things are stored in Azure.
On Azure. Okay. Thank you very much for that clarity. Another question that I have for you is, let's talk SharePoint now. You mentioned SharePoint. With SharePoint being a tool that we can use for document management, we have the ability to handle document versioning in SharePoint. So is this also possible with OneDrive? I mean, if I have a document up in OneDrive and I make changes to the document, am I able to view an earlier snapshot of that document in
Yes,
OneDrive?
you have it. If you talk
Okay.
about OneDrive for business, then it's very well.
Yes.
OneDrive for business,
Okay.
it's a little bit deeper. It's a SharePoint technology. You have a document library, and normally nowadays in SharePoint Online means a document library is a site collection. If you have another document library, that's a site collection. If you have another document library, it's a site collection. Each OneDrive for business is its own SharePoint site collection. That means if you have 200 users, means 200 OneDrive for business site collections. It's capsuled, it's only for you. You are your own administrator about that. But the people, the administrators can say to you, your OneDrive for business, it's only 1 terabyte. Oh, they can with one click for 50,000 users says, now I give 50,000 users 4 terabyte of data. That's one click on the right thing, and all the people have more storage. So therefore, it's different. I can say only Katham will have it, only one. That's also possible. So that's a possibility that the admins can a little bit control it. If I leave the document, the company, then I can say, okay, as an admin, I will give it to this people or this people to look if it's interesting to have the data or we have to destroy it. So that's a different one. Means that's inside the green areas we see on the slide, but the gray, the OneDrive personal, it's only a snapshot of that. And that's your personal thing. And I don't like it inside companies. I say to the companies, do not use it. If you make pictures, you can do it in OneDrive for business automatically with your Android or iOS device. And if you do it for OneDrive personal, you can have it. For personal things, it has nothing. I do not want to have, so for the security aspect, I do not want to have it mixed it up. The problem is if you are going to SharePoint or in the admin console and you say, I want to have this in Office 365, that means you see only OneDrive, but it's OneDrive for business. That's a marketing company. You have to know that.
Okay. And quickly, before you try to show us something now, let's talk about access for a bit. Once we begin to load up our OneDrive or OneDrive for business now with a lot of files, can you advise us now, what is the best way to access our files? Is it from OneDrive itself, or is it best we access it from Office or from Office Online?
That's a different. You have to know, okay, if I start a document and I say it, okay, I want to do it in OneDrive for business, then I save it there. You have a structure if you want to do it with folders and all the thing. Means now, OneDrive for business, the cloud handles all the stuff, not me. My device, if it's synced, has nothing to do. If your hashtag is going out, no problem. Take a new one, accept it. The OneDrive is also syncing the data again. And if you have a Word, you can also save it in OneDrive. Now you see that if you're using Office 365 and a Word, it comes up, hey, you do want it or in Outlook, therefore it's on the slide there. In Outlook, you want to say, okay, should I attach a document or store it on OneDrive for business and give the persons the ability to access the file? So no longer transfer of these big documents, yeah. And therefore, it's difficult. The handle SharePoint or OneDrive for business is the cloud. And the cloud mentioned all about this. Means your Windows 10, if you sync all this stuff, you can sync so many things. Means that you always have the latest version on your hard disk. Or if you say files on demand, that's a feature I always like because it's only the name there, only a picture, but it takes no space. Always, I click on it, and then I have the data there.
Okay. So how about for external sharing? You know, external sharing is one very cool feature of OneDrive or OneDrive for business. I want to ask, is there a limit to the size of files that we can share externally?
No. So there is only one limit. You have to know, in OneDrive for business, if I want to share it with you, I can have only one file, or if I share a folder with you, you can share it.
Yes.
Also, you access it and you can sync it on your machine. That's a different one. You can sync it. Therefore, you have all the files there. And you can have also OneDrive files on demand, only the names about a lot of functions. The sync engine, the OneDrive Exe, the sync engine, I call it the next generation sync client. That's an engine you have on your machine with each Windows 10. You can have it all install it in Windows 7 and 8 Plus. This is not a problem. The sync engine can handle up to 300,000 files. Wow. Not the gigabytes, how much? Only files. So do you have to know, okay, if I connect in a document library, and that's most the people do it wrong, they say, okay, I want to migrate from a file server to a document library. That's the same thing. And then I have access to the document library. If I go, that's not a problem. And if I leave the company, still other people has access to the document library, and they do it from a file server. You know that, the old stuff. But the thing is, if you have more than 300,000, the migration people always say, how many gigabytes? Just mention me. I have to ask, hey, how many documents are there? Because the engine on your client has to do that and handle all the stuff with syncing. And this is the limit with 300,000 files.
Files. And so quickly, let's mention Ignite. Let's talk about Ignite for a little bit now. Ignite is currently on, and Ignite is usually a place to showcase, new stuff, what is new about the different Microsoft products line now. Is there any new stuff in OneDrive for Business, or are there things that is been or that is going to be announced at Ignite this year about things that we should expect in OneDrive?
We will see a lot. In OneDrive for Business, there is one thing that you cannot, not yet, it's not there, that comes with a group policy, and that's very interesting. For group policy is interesting for companies. If you say, okay, it works not only at me, it works in a completely company. So that's the good thing. We have only 40 group policies. That's not so much. But the most important thing is that you then can have that you can exclude files. Let's say sometimes the people want to have old PST files from Outlook as archives, want to move it. And sometimes they have a little bit problem, and because OneDrive will not have these PST files. PST files, from my expectations, is in OneDrive. In Outlook, you can have it in Exchange Online. But you have to move that. And sometimes the people want to do it. Now, if you want to go in OneDrive for Business and want to have these PST files, you can now say you got not in trouble and exclude the file. And not only, I can say *PST, and then the sync engine knows, hey, all PST files are only on my machine. I will not get in trouble with that. Or let's say I have some files with more than 100 gigabyte. Okay, CAD files or something. Normally the people, because my OneDrive and OneDrive for Business can now handle files up to 100 gigs. One file with 100 gigs. But if you do not want to have several things inside, you can exclude it. And that's, for me, it's not there. It will come in the next weeks, months. But that's, for me, from a technical perspective, on a ground level, a very interesting thing.
Okay, thank you. Because of time now, so I'll ask you this last question now. Can you walk us through? I would like us to show us something, this time. I was hoping we could get to 3 or maybe 4, but because of the time that we have, can you show us your favorite top 2, I should say, top 2 tricks for OneDrive for Business? What are those, and can you show them to us?
The most important thing is, for me, not only a trick. It's yes, it's a trick, but we have to handle that. And this one, let's look. That's Synchronize shared with me. Some people look at me and ask me at my blog, and that's the most important question. If I have it shared with me, and therefore Microsoft is also doing it a little bit, means that I share with you. Sometimes the people, I mentioned it before, I will share with you not only a file, I want to share it that you may have to synchronize on your machine. If I share it, you can only work with the link inside the browser. But if I do it and put it inside a folder and share the folder with you, you got, although the first thing, okay, I'm inside, and then I press the sync button, and then it's there. Means here, you see Julian Versuch, that's a user, and he gives me access to a folder, Ignite Demo. Means it's sync on my machine. So therefore, people can have it on the machine and do not have to look at that. And then Microsoft will come also with add a folder to connect to OneDrive on a simpler part. That's the same thing we have here, but it's only, you see, shared with me, you click on the button and say, edit the link to me, and it will also display it here, but you can then change the name and so on. It's not changed at my OneDrive or Julian's OneDrive and the folder, but only in yours. And that's for me very interesting that you can synchronize. And the trick is only you have to put only, if it's only one file, you have to put it in a folder. Then you can sync, or the other person you share the information can sync it on their machines. And that's for me interesting, because if I have on the machine, and people are older, they have to use the Windows Explorer and not only the web part.
So thank you so much, Mr. OneDrive, for spending time with us today on the show. So is there any last words you'd like to share with us before we call it a wrap on today's show?
Yes. The thing is, look, read the stuff. I have not only a German version, I have most of them in an English version. You can read that. I write it twice. Okay. I only write it twice with the screenshots and say, okay, the PowerPoints are always in English, but the Germans like it that they have it in German, and therefore I have write it twice. It's too much. It's a lot of work, because the screenshots, it's different if I talk to them and share with me in German, teilen mit mir. Yeah, that's different, and they wanted to have it in German. Look for the first thing and scroll down about 850 articles. There is also a search button. Give it the chance, and otherwise connect with me via Twitter. I like Twitter in there. There's no limit there, but connect with me in Twitter and so on, and say, okay, I have a problem with that. I will ask them, and we have to connect that, and I will do that.
So you've heard it from Mr. OneDrive himself. So if you have any document you're looking to share, you're looking to store, so please use OneDrive for Business to store your document and take advantage of the sharing and the collaborative features of OneDrive for Business. So please remember to subscribe on our channel on YouTube. Is Tech Talk Wednesday with Kazim on YouTube, and across the other social media platform as well. So I come to the end of the show. Thank you so much, Mr. OneDrive, for coming on the show today with us to share your knowledge and sharing your time with us. And on that note, it's bye-bye from myself and Mr. OneDrive.
Okay, thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.